For the summit's next session, we'll continue zeroing in and looking specifically at the explosion of new mobile devices and connectivity that are fueling revolutions in content and in distribution. Never again, and I think we can all agree that phones will just not be a tool for communication anymore. And to lead that discussion, we've invited Catherine Rushton, media editor of the Daily Telegraph from London. Catherine writes regularly about topics ranging from the rapid rise in smartphones to how digital media is changing business models. She's joined by David Kenny, chairman of the Weather Channel Companies, and Jim Wuthrich, president of Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. Naveen Tiwari, founder and CEO of InMobile, unfortunately got held back in the fog, so he will not be joining this panel.
Good morning, everyone. So we've had our introductions, and you've heard this morning some of the blinding statistics about how rapidly smartphone usage is growing, how rapidly tablets are growing. We've heard this all before. The one that always sticks in my head is that by 2016 there will be 10 billion mobile smartphones and tablets in usage in the world, compared to a world population of 7.6 billion. It's unignorable. But how's this playing out in your businesses? David, tell me how important mobile is at this stage for the Weather Channel companies.
Yeah, so the Weather Channel companies delivers weather in a lot of different ways, off a cable channel, off the weather we produce for local broadcasters around the world, on our websites, and on mobile, and mobile is now the lead. Mobile is the primary way people get their weather in most of the world. We have 90 million of our own branded apps downloaded. We also power many others. And in fact, it's the most used category on a smartphone. 47% of people with a smartphone check the weather on it at least once a day.
So that's going to be 5 billion of those people, hopefully.
Yeah, that's what we're counting on.
And you should probably mention in that so the 90 million apps that have been downloaded don't include the apps that you supply to other companies, like if you have an iPhone and you check the weather on that, the automatic app is one that you produce, is that right?
Exactly. So our weather goes to many places, but it's certainly the primary way people get the weather today.
And Jim, at this stage for Warner Brothers, how significant is mobile? Is it still, is it still a relatively niche part of the business?
Yeah, overall for what the business Warner Brothers in, which most of you are familiar with, is the film and television side of the business. It's an important part, but it's still a fairly small part of it. Applications.
Like what sort of percentage does it?
Well, it depends on how you look at the business. If it's purchasing our product, either our television shows or our films, it's really small. I would say that mobile in particular, out of the digital realm, is probably around, and if I include tablets in that, it's probably around 30%, because most people are still accessing that content through PCs and such. But it has created a whole new opportunity for us in the app space. We also publish games. It's becoming more and more important on the game side of the business. And we recently made a purchase of an app company called Flixster, which provides movie reviews and times at theaters and such. And that primary way to get to consumers is actually through mobile. So it just depends on which part of the business we're talking about.
And what about the sort of more traditional part of your business? So, films, that kind of content. How much of that is watched on mobiles and tablet devices at the moment?
Generally what happens with long-form content, and I throw in long-form content, both film and television content, consumers will gravitate to the best screen that they have available at the time. So when they're in the home, traditionally they've gone to the large television. More and more, though, tablets are becoming a more important part of people's accessing that content. And then when you're on the go, either you have your tablet or your mobile, it's created a whole new marketplace essentially for us, because traditionally we have been bound by the home and by the screen. But with mobile and the proliferation of the devices, we now can entertain people just about anywhere. So if you're stuck on a train, or a lot of the people today who had problems getting here are probably stuck on airplanes and such, if they wanted to, they could bring up their movie collection or the television show and catch up on that.
And how is it changing what you can do in terms of what you provide over mobile? You're doing a lot with social networking, aren't you? Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing, for example, with Twitter?
Yeah, we can. There are 200 tweets per minute about the weather. People like to talk about it. It also is a popular status update on Facebook. So on weather.com, you can either love your weather or hate your weather, and then that becomes your status. So that's the beginning. And this means that people are connecting Twitter and Facebook with weather. That leads to new applications. So we have something called My Friend's Weather. So if there's a hurricane or a typhoon or a tornado approaching a location, it will tell you that, and it will also put the pictures up of your friends that will be affected by that. And this is actually helpful to people.
Slightly macabre, that, isn't it?
No, it actually turns out that people call their mothers and say, "Are you okay?" In tornadoes, we actually think Twitter saves lives because we begin to tweet to people like, "You should really
get indoors.
You should get indoors, go down the basement." And in fact, we only had 5 deaths from tornadoes in America this year, which is down, to a tenth of what it was the year before.
And is that linked to this kind of information?
We absolutely believe the more we communicate around storms, the better off it is. So we think it's useful, and people are genuinely interested in what's going on with their friends. So these connections have proven pretty interesting. That's the most serious times. I would say in everyday times, because there are tweets and pictures about the weather, we actually use that in our apps so that people can see what other folks are saying about the weather in a location. So you can really know, for example, surfers use a lot to know up and down the California coast where are the best places right now. And that aggregation of tweets into our app is really useful to people.
And what about you, Jim? You said that you're focusing more heavily on gaming because of the rapid uptake of mobiles and tablets. Are you able to introduce more social elements into your products?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest changes that the platforms provide, because what we've also found consumers doing when they're sitting in their home watching on their big screen television, it generally isn't just one screen that they have in front of them. They tend to have another screen in their lap, and be it a tablet, their mobile, or a laptop. What they're doing on that is they're engaging socially, and they're talking about what's actually going on the screen. So it could be a live television broadcast of their latest favorite television show, or they might be watching a movie, and they're connecting through the tablet based on what they're watching. We've also developed applications that allow people, while they're actually watching the movie on their device, to connect with people and send out Twitter feeds that this is my favorite scene and such, and connecting with those specific scenes. So it's really added a social component to linear form of watching content, in addition to the traditional gaming part of it, which has always been a very social form of entertainment.
And are you able to make money off those social components?
Yeah, the way we monetize most of our content is one of a couple of ways. You can sell it transactionally, and in that model we either what we call VOD, you can rent it for a period of time, or you can own it, which we tend to call in the business electronic sell-through. You also have the ability to do ad-supported, which is another way to support content. And then finally, SVOD, and SVOD is one of those growing areas. If you think of a Netflix-type service or an HBO Go or the Sky services, those are the subscription services. So it allows us to monetize it through that way. And basically what it's doing is it's providing more utility to that content. So if I have an HBO subscription, for instance, now I'm not just bound to being in the house to enjoy that HBO subscription. I can take it with me on the go. It's part of the overall package that is the way that we monetize it. The other way that mobile helps us monetize our content is that two ways. One, as I mentioned before with Flickster, it's a very popular app to be able to figure out what time a movie's playing, to choose which movie you're going to go to. So it drives you to our movies as you're going through the process. And then finally, of course, you can buy the content directly off of those devices as well. So the more ways that we can provide access to our content is all ways that we can monetize it.
But everyone always talks about the opportunities associated with mobile and that sort of thing. but I mean, we were talking about Facebook earlier. There are also huge perils as well, and the increase in the number of people using mobiles and tablets to access this content means that more people are accessing it online, it's easier to pirate. I think you said that Warner Brothers estimates that nearly 90% of its content is watched illegally. Has that gone up with mobiles and smartphones?
It depends on the marketplace, on those piracy figures. It can go up to 90%. In the traditional markets where we monetize most of our content, the piracy rate is actually much lower than that. That's the problem, right? And that's also the opportunity. The internet has created great opportunities, but with that comes greater access and more ways for people to get our content illegally. What we try to advocate is the best way to approach this problem is to come up with more innovative solutions for consumers to access our content. So that could be anything from the variety of business models that I mentioned earlier, be it a subscription service or an ad-supported model for marketplaces that maybe are not as inclined to pay transactionally, introducing those types of models into the marketplace. So we think that the best way to fight the piracy is to have innovative commercial solutions. But we can't do it just with innovative commercial solutions. We have to have rules around it and ways to enforce those rules. Otherwise, it's a free-for-all.
And are you taking steps in that direction at the moment?
Absolutely. All around the world. My remit is outside the Americas, so I spend most of my time traveling around the world and visiting markets. And all the markets are in varying degrees of development, both from an internet perspective and as a content protection standpoint. So in each market, we take a little different approach to protect our content, and a little different approach on how we actually monetize that content.
And David, most of your, or all of your smartphone and tablet revenues are ad-based, is that right?
Yeah, so, well, we have three models. So we have paid apps. Those tend to be professionals, so boaters, certain sort of farming applications, folks who need deep data, they pay for it on a subscription basis, energy traders, so that's one model. Then we sell direct advertising on our sites, and then increasingly we've built a network, so that there are at the moment there are 2,000 other sites. We expect this to grow, so other people build sites and apps that bring weather into them. So they're local apps or they're travel apps, something where the weather's relevant, and you put it in there, and then you become part of our network. And then we sell a network ad, which is probably the fastest growing part of the business, because it turns out some advertisers want to buy rainy afternoons, some want to buy sunny days at the beach, some want to buy thunderstorms. Dating sites are primarily opened on rainy afternoons, so they want to buy rainy afternoons. Home Depot wants to buy both, so they want to do certain indoor projects if there's inclement weather, and they want to do different projects in the locations where there's happy weather. Walmart, the same way, they actually change what's on sale in the store based on the weather in that location. Quick serve restaurants absolutely change their menus and their offers based on the weather in each location. So there's two things. One is they want to buy the weather, but secondly, they want to buy specific locations, which is part of how this is working on our own sites. But again, as people join our network and take our APIs, then they have the chance to monetize that way as well.
And I'm right in saying, aren't I, that most companies that operate sort of online advertising models and then mobile advertising models get less money for the mobile ads, but you're different because it's so specifically location-based.
Yeah, listen, all ads have a marketplace. So the fact that mobile is in many ways more useful to our advertisers because it's even more geographically focused. It's true that people who access us on the PC, on the browser, also tell us the location. Weather is useless without a location, but the mobile device is even more.
You don't suffer those privacy problems with people sharing. People are willing to share their information with you far more than the average content provider.
Less than 1% of the people who would come to Weather would come and not tell us their location. It's not so useful to them otherwise.
And how does the advertising work best for you guys? Is it mostly banner ads? What do you do?
Yeah, well, listen, I think there needs to be more creativity. That's part of the challenge with mobile. So our best advertisers are buying sponsorships. So Travelers Insurance sponsored My Friend's Weather. So that they actually put that message into the communication around your friends and made an insurance offer. Burberry bought the backgrounds of our iPad app for the entire month of August so they could show off British weather during the Olympics. And it actually was quite beautiful and brand building. So I would say really working with the publishers to find ways to do creative that's a part of the experience is working a lot better than just trying to put a banner at the bottom of a phone.
Yeah. What do you both feel about, you know, we kind of talk about smartphones and tablets in one lump, but what are you seeing in your businesses in terms of the way people are using one over the other? I know that one of the points that Naveen was going to make, if he could get here, was that I think that about 20% of advertising for his business is over tablets, but that engagement is a third higher than with smartphones, and it's sort of set to rocket like that. Is that what you're finding with your content as well?
For us, we do find for the linear video product, the longer form, definitely the tablet is the place to be, and it's created a new opportunity for you. For the content. If you look at what people do on tablets, I think the latest research I saw, number one is they check email, number two, they're browsing the internet, number three, they're checking news and such, but then number 4 and 5 is music and watching video content. So it's created another screen and another opportunity. I live in a household that has a total of 4 of us in it. You come to our household any given evening, and we're all in the dining room sitting around our own little screens. And I've got two young boys that are definitely in their own little world on their screens. They barely watch television anymore. Those screens have become the substitution for television. So I think what we're going to do is really see a difference in how people are engaging with content as that younger group comes up. They also have mobile devices, but their mobile is primarily for when they're outside of the house. So when they're inside of the house, the screen that they use is the next size up, and that's either a laptop or it is a tablet. So I think this concept of what is the best screen you have available really plays out even in the household. Although I can tell you, I've got this nice, beautiful 60-inch screen, high-definition screen that gets fewer and fewer usage now because people have screens that satisfy their individual demands. And so, you know, it used to be that people would gather around the television and watch a movie together or a television show, but increasingly, if they're gathering in that room, they also have a screen in front of them where they're watching some other content or they're engaging in social and doing something. So I definitely see a difference, even just in my little world, on how people are actually engaging with mobile different than tablet.
Yeah, I'd only add that people are using screens together. A lot of people play fantasy football, and it turns out that picking your team depends on players. Different players perform better in different weather. So we have a lot of people who are watching football and using the weather app at the same time, and then playing fantasy football on a different screen and then coming back. So it's just one use case. I'd also say we've just begun. The big apps we're working on now are for automobiles, because the screen in the automobile is going to become a mobile screen as well. And there'll be a weather app there. And then ultimately, the TV screen is going to become a smart TV, and then it's going to have more apps on it as well. So I think it's phone and tablet are just 2 of a dozen screens we'll have 5 years from now.
I might comment on that because what's happening is we are getting barraged with the amount of content that's coming in anymore, and particularly around video content, there is so much that there are actually applications now that help you just find the content you're looking for. So you could use a Fanhattan app, for instance, or Matcha. These apps help you find where that content is actually available anymore because there is so much content. And until the programming guides on the smart TVs get better, I think what you're going to see is that the tablets themselves are going to become that electronic programming guide, if you will, to help guide you to a discovery of content, but then also where is it actually available and how do you get it. So in the US, you could have multiple different subscriptions. You could be on Amazon Prime, you could be on Netflix, you could be on HBO, plus all your cable services, and you want to know where that content actually is. It'll tell you if it's on any of those services, or if it's on Amazon, or if it's on iTunes, or any of these things. It's becoming an intermediate device to allow you to access it on any screen.
Is there a danger if more and more people are second screening or using tablets as that intermediate device? Is there a danger that basically other content companies can kind of insert themselves between you and your viewer and essentially hijack your ad revenues? Do you know what I mean? So, for example,
yeah, no, it creates new opportunities. Absolutely, there's new business models that are forming all the time. I take some comfort in that. Ultimately, what people are interested in is the base content that we're creating, and that's what we do very, very well as a studio. Is we create some of the best content in the world. We have some of the best storytellers around the world. Later on this afternoon, we'll have Robert from Google talking about what they're doing in this content space. But clearly, where we found our opportunity is taking some of the best artists around the world and creating great content and making it available for consumers. I think that there's an opportunity for other services that wrap around that content, particularly in the social and other ways that people can engage and even get more out of that content. And we welcome companies coming into that space. But that's just an adjunct to things.
Essentially taking a slice of the ad revenue that is available around this, you know, sort of amazing high-budget content that you produce?
I wouldn't say worried about it, because we do have some rules set up around what you can and can't do with our content ultimately. And so there's some protections there. But I think ultimately the market benefits as there's more and more innovation around and things that people can create around the content.
Yeah, I'd go the other way, which is when we connected with Twitter or with Facebook or did our Yahoo integration, that just increased the number of people using our content. So sure, we have to rev share to do that because we're each bringing part of the experience, but it massively increases the audience. So I would say if people can add value to your content and you can strike the right business deal, and that's always a matter of negotiation, it helps the end user. And the more the end user's engaged, the more everybody's going to make more money.
What's the worst business deal that you've done?
Well, I would say at the beginning of the iPhone, when we agreed to give the data to Yahoo on an unbranded basis for the preloaded app, it was a data deal. It wasn't a brand deal, and going forward, I wouldn't do that. I think it's very important that you brand your content.
We're going to throw this open to questions in a moment, but before we do, one last one that I wanted to ask, which was, we're talking about the kind of shift to mobile, shift to tablets. At what point does television become niche or redundant?
At what point? There's another trend that's going on. We've got smaller screens that we can put in our pocket. Even those screens are getting larger in size. And if you look at the screens that are ending up in our homes, they're actually getting bigger as well. It's making the experience more immersive and make you feel more part of it. Even the technology continues to change. We have the high definition sets, but then on top of it, we've added the ability to do 3D into the household. So I think that you're going to see constant growth in the size of the screen and in the experience it actually delivers. So I don't see it as becoming irrelevant ultimately. I think all of these screens add more to the base experience. What we've done with our DVD product, our Blu-ray product, for instance, is we've used the second screen as a way to enhance the experience that's going on the big screen. So if you buy Sherlock Holmes, the latest Sherlock Holmes, you can actually download an app for free that then interacts with your Blu-ray player. And so you can go and, traditionally we'd have director commentary and some other things, but because of this more powerful computer that's sitting in your lap, you're able to navigate and bring new things out there, at the same time bring the full richness up on the big screen. So all of this, I think, is actually additive, and it's not taking away from it.
Do you think there will be a point when you become a mobile device-first company? I say device because I think tablets will be more important. But.
Well, it depends on what you define as mobile, right? Because what mobility by its definition is the sense that you can take things with you, and ultimately we want people to experience our content anywhere and any time. So I hope we become more of a mobile company ultimately, because you don't have to experience it in any one place. And on top of it, it's creating new experiences for the consumer, and it's opening up all kinds of new business opportunities for us. So we're not just producing film and TV anymore, we're producing numerous apps and
So I'll put this a
games.
slightly different way. At what point do you think more than half of your revenues will come from mobile devices?
It's going to be a while. I've been working on the digital expansion of our business now for nearly 6 years. And the one thing that is the holy grail for digital is connecting to the television set. Because what we have found is, yes, people they like the ability to download to their tablets, to their mobile devices, to their PCs and such. But until you can connect to that big screen, you're not there yet, because most of the television and the film product isn't.
Yeah, our situation's different. Half our ad revenues are mobile already, or are digital already, and mobile's half of that. And at the current growth rates, it's probably 3 years away that mobile is the lead category. First, mobile is also the way we're going global. That said, I wouldn't underestimate TV, at least in the US. So we're also the most distributed cable channel. 101.3 million homes have the Weather Channel. So everybody who has cable or a satellite dish insists on having it for live events. And I would say, most days people are getting on a mobile. When Hurricane Isaac came, 58 million people watched that on television. So live. So
do you guys rub your hands when there's a massive weather disaster?
Our Super Bowl are hurricanes and tornadoes and blizzards, yeah.
I can't imagine that DVRs are affecting your business at all, is it?
Nobody wants a DVR right now. Don't underestimate the importance of live in sports, in news, and certainly in weather.
But will you have a proper full-blown television channel in, say, a decade's time?
Yeah, I would say yeah, because people still want. We have a hardcore audience where weather really affects their lives, and they watch it religiously every day, and they want more detail and more storytelling and more science than they're getting on a mobile device. And I would say B, in these live events that are really important to people's lives, it's important that it's there.
This gentleman here.
Good morning, Jeremy Foster from Ericsson. I was wondering if you might comment a little bit on business metrics. If we think about this transition from broadcast to online, and perhaps there are some business metrics of success that we've relied on in the past that maybe don't help us anymore. Maybe there's some we need to embrace from this online world, and maybe there are some metrics which survive the transition as we go from broadcast offline to online. I wonder if you could have a talk about some of those metrics, because that basically determines where we start to invest our money in terms of ROI.
Yeah, so, the metrics we had for cable were ratings, which treat everyone the same. I would say we now certainly have metrics by usage and use case, but we're also valuing the individual subscriber. Because some subscribers just advertise at different rates than others, and there are economics to that. Now, I think we have to serve weather to everyone, but we're able to we get better ad rates on mobile because we charge differently based on the zip code, and some zip codes are worth more than others.
Yeah, I think that ultimately you have the ability to measure and target a bit better as you get more into this interactive space than traditional broadcast by its very definition. So I think that we'll continue to look at ways to actually know who's on the other end of that message. And when you know who that person is on the other end of the message, the ability to charge for those ad rates and such naturally goes up. So I think that'll be the single biggest change in it.
Thank you. There was a gentleman. And then we're going to have time for one more after that.
My question is, my name is Harris Breslin. I'm at the American University of Sharjah here in the UAE. My question is more for Jim, I think. It seems that in terms of digital content, there's 3 problems. There's DRM, there's ownership, and there's delivery. When do you think, and what do you think it will take for organizations such as yours to deliver their content to all screens all at once?
Sorry, that was on screen.
all at once?
Because there's a couple of different questions in there. There's one, the issue of the base business model, which is predicated on, and Ari mentioned this yesterday, Windows. So essentially, this content is very expensive if you're talking about movie product in particular. The best model that we found to monetize is that it moves from these different screens. So it starts in theaters, it goes into home entertainment, goes into pay, and then ultimately goes into free, and we make it available. And until we come up with another way to monetize it, I think that model will be around for a while. That's not to say that there isn't a lot of pressures to condense those windows. And Warner's been at the forefront of it in a variety of ways. One area, traditionally, when it came out on home entertainment, we released it on physical product, be it DVD or Blu-ray first. And then 60 to 90 days later, we'd make it available on what we call VOD, on video on demand, in the rental services. A number of years ago, we said, hey, this doesn't make sense anymore, and we collapsed those windows, and we put the two together at the same time, so the consumer could either go out and buy the product on DVD or physical, or they could go to their television, their cable operator, or their internet provider, and then download it and actually watch it then. And we actually saw quite an increase in our business at that time, because basically we're servicing another part of the marketplace, somebody who did not necessarily want to own it, but they wanted the convenience of rental in their house, and they didn't want to go out to a rental shop in order to do it. Plus, we had a lot of advertising around it. It basically created a lot of demand for it. The question is now, where's the next window, and what do you look at? In the U.S., we tested a concept that we called basically home premiere. And if you look at the release window of a theatrical movie to the time that it's available on in the home, it's traditionally around 4 months, depending where you are and which movie it is. And we said, hey, there's a real opportunity, because most of those movies, after 30 days, are already leaving the theater. So we had 3 months where we weren't doing anything with that content. We had just spent a lot of money to get you excited to go see that movie. So for whatever reason, you might not have got to theaters. So we made it available at basically 2 months into the process, and we tested it with a number of movies. A couple of studios did this in the U.S., and in the end, it wasn't successful. And there's a number of reasons for that. And I think ultimately we'll see other ways of trying that concept, but it still has a long ways to go. Ultimately, the Windows system, I think, will have to change, just because now everybody's aware of content all around the world at the same time because of the internet, but the business model is going to take a little while to work out. On the DRM front, which was this other part of your question, I think that we're seeing a lot of movement in that space. The industry has come together under an industry consortium called DECE, and we created a format called Ultraviolet. And we make the content available with a set of rules around it so that you can watch it basically anywhere. You're not trapped into one device or one platform. You can actually watch it either in a streaming form, or download it to your phone, or watch it on iOS or on an Android device, all of these types of things. So we're trying to solve the problem of getting the DRM and putting it in the background. We still think it's very important that we have to have some protection around the content, but the consumer doesn't need to know about it. It needs to be in the background, and that's what we're working on as the industry.
Thank you very much. I think I lied about the last question. We are now over time, but thank you very much, gentlemen. That was really interesting. Good rest of your day.